My name is Frances Walton. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Ridgefield. Could all members of the League stick their hands up? I'd like to see how many members we've got here. Thank you so much for attending this program. Really appreciate it. I also noticed in the audience we have members of our elected boards, Board of Education, Board of Finance, obviously the first select person. I really appreciate you coming to this today too. Just a quick shout out for the League as well. We have 2 more programs in March if you're interested in signing up. On the 21st of March with the Ridgefield Library, we will be hosting a Meet Your Legislators. Please sign up at the library marketplace, pretty much the same as you did for this. And on the 29th of March, we have women's suffrage since 1776. We have 2 professors coming up from, I always get this wrong, Sacred Heart University. And they're doing a tour. One of them has a book coming out, and they're at Fairfield League of Women Voters also in March. It should be really, really interesting. I hope many of you can sign up. That's a Sunday. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first selectman. He's going to talk about this. This is one of our Get to Know Your Town series, and he talks about the state of the town. And I'd also like to give a great shout out to the Ridgefield Library, who are our co-sponsors to have programs where we can educate and inform the citizens of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and of course the Ridgefield Library. It's a pleasure to be here, an opportunity to talk to you who are interested. A quick story: a couple of years ago, I was coming here to speak, and there was no parking, probably as it is today, right? And I parked across the street, walked over, and I'm thinking, this room is going to be packed. Look at the cars. This is wonderful, right? And I came around, came downstairs. I was getting psyched, going through everything. And I walked in, and there were 7 people here. And I went, I think to Andy or to Brenda. I said, where is everyone? And they said, upstairs with Mommy and me. So there are priorities in life, and our children are very, very important to all of us, our grandchildren, children, great-grandchildren, if you have any. But I'm here today to talk about the town that we all love, the town that we care about, and the town that we want to participate in. And that's why you're here today, to find out some of the things going on. I'm going to give you an overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about the current budget, then get into the 27 budget. Fortunately, this was delayed a week, and I say fortunately. It gave us an opportunity as the board to go through our budget process, so I can give you a little bit more information. It's not the final numbers relative to the fiscal year 27 budget, but it is through the Board of Selectpersons at this point and heading to the Board of Finance. So without further ado, let me talk about fiscal year 26, the year we're in. Operating wise, and for those of you who may not understand, we have an operating side of the budget and a capital. Operating is your recurring expenses, payroll, etc., things you have to pay every week, every month, etc. The capital are some of the questions you'll see on a budget referendum ballot, and they may be new fire trucks, new highway trucks, things that have a long life of over 10 years and a cost usually in excess of $10,000. Those are our capital items. So I'm going to talk to you first about the operating side. And we're in pretty good shape. What we do every month is we have a revenue meeting, and this started in 2010, I think we began it, because in 2009, if you recall, our budget referendum failed. Everything across the board failed. It was the beginning of the recession. People were concerned. What's going to happen to our taxes? What's going to happen, generally speaking, with this economy? And everything failed, except one thing, is our roads. Our roads are our most important thing, and they passed by about 40 votes. And as a result, subsequently, all the department heads always ask, just put my request in with the roads. I said, no, that's not going to happen. But it was a tough year, a very, very difficult year. And since then, we've been motoring along, doing okay, trying to hold tax increases down while at the same time trying to improve education. Our educational system is critical to this town. Main Street is critical to this town. We're always getting attacked from various areas, whether it's the state, the feds, developers wanting to build, and I'll get into a lot of that detail. But back to the operating, we're running a surplus right now. It's not a big surplus, about 500 or 600,000, which isn't big, and we'll see what happens. But the revenues are good, and I use that as a barometer in town. The monthly meeting I have for revenues, because that's going to give us an indication of what's happening with your own personal feelings, called your disposable income from my perspective. Our Parks and Rec Center. If people are signing up their kids for this summer for the camp program, that's a positive sign. People are confident that, okay, I can see that far ahead and I know we're going to be secure. Let me sign our kids up for camp. That's a good sign. Conveyances, house sales, that's another very important barometer in our community. And what's interesting over this first 6 months, 6 months of 2026 fiscal, for July through November, those 5 months, I asked our town clerk to break down not only the values of the sales, which we track, 0 to 500, 600, 700, all the way up to 2 million. But also, I asked her to do me a favor and look into, if it's available, what the percent of mortgages of the people that are moving in. The average cost of a home in Ridgefield for those 5 months was about 1.2, dropping toward the fifth month around $1 million. A big number for Ridgefield, numbers we haven't seen before in terms of cost. But most important to me was the fact that through November, 40% of the new homes conveyed or sold had no mortgages. So someone said, sorry? 40, 40. 40% had no mortgages. And someone said to me in our revenue meeting, well, what difference does it make? That should make you happy, right? And I said, well, it does. It means we have people coming into town that are financially secure. However, it's an indication to me that the socioeconomic fabric of our community may be changing, that the things that we've seen over the years, how Ridgefield has grown, we have lost that diversity of tradesmen, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, being able to buy a home here. And that may not sound like a lot because all of us that live here now feel, oh, this is great. It's wonderful. Life is great in Ridgefield. But if you take a step back and you look at the community, you can see that fabric changing. And is that good? Some people say, I'm happy. It's fine. I worked very hard to get everything I've got, and that's where I want to live. However, there are others that say, I'm barely being able to make it through. I'm hanging on. If one variable changes in my life, if I lose a job or if my spouse loses a job, we may not be able to stay here any longer. And that's a serious concern as well. So as we move forward, it becomes more and more difficult to balance how everyone feels or what everyone wants or what everyone thinks. And that's our job. We have to listen to everyone as elected officials and try and come up with a solution, a mill rate, a school system, a highway system, paving, whatever the combination is. We have to figure that out as elected officials. That's our job. And most of our elected officials, believe it or not, are volunteers. And they take a tough time sometimes. People can be very rough. People can be very demanding. And they're volunteers, but they're doing it because they believe in it. So as I talk today, keep that in mind that, we're trying to balance everything so it satisfies everyone. And we're doing programs, whether it's for the A school that we're building, to handle alternative high school or transitioning kids. We're looking at senior tax credit programs. We're looking at veterans exemptions, et cetera. And it all has a cost, and we're trying to weave that through the budgetary cycle. So the biggest project, I'm going to go into capital now, because operating, we're pretty good this year. Our capital projects that have been ongoing, you may have been down to Branchville, 102 and Route 7, where Depot Road was shut down a couple of years ago now, and you're wondering, oh my God, is that ever going to reopen? Hopefully it'll open this spring. It's scheduled to be reopened. We're all done, ready to go. And once that Depot Road bridge opens, and it was replaced because it was condemned by the state. It was a very old bridge, and they said, safety-wise, we have to shut it down. And what was happening is that trucks going over to the self-storage or West Branchville Road behind the train station were traveling over Depot Road Bridge, because if you go into Portland Avenue, you can't make that left back. That was a serious issue. So we shut Portland down. There's a new bridge, shut down Depot. There's a new bridge there. Next project will be moving south, and hopefully they'll begin work in April on Portland Avenue. So Depot will open, Portland will close, and that bridge gets replaced, as well as a widening of the rail crossing there that will allow traffic to take that very difficult left-hand turn. That project is about $7 million to $8 million, and that is all federal and state grant money that we received about 5 to 6 years ago. We got the final approval. It takes a while when you get grant money to get the shovel in the ground, but we're there and we're working on it. What's interesting also is Ridgeberry Road. Ridgeberry Road is a constant issue. I don't know if any of you live up in the north end of town, but we've been able to secure grants for Ridgeberry Road. Those are about $8 million. They came in 2 tranches, one last year for $4 million, again this year for $4 million. It's about a $10 million project. We're going to start at the Danbury line and come all the way into 116 at the high school. That project will start in this spring, but we're going to do it section at a time. The first section will be the north section, which is in the worst condition, and we'll be doing a full depth replacement of that. Some temporary pavement will be going on, but you're going to see a lot of activity on Ridgeberry Road over the next couple of years with the rebuilding of that road, and a real serious correction of the drainage on the road, because there's a lot of water issues with that as well. I want to move now, current projects. I need to reset myself here. I started talking without looking at my guide. That happens. The 27 budget. As I said earlier, we just completed, the Board of Selectmen did the 27 fiscal year budget. And the Board of Select Persons came in about 3.5%. We were able to get that down to 2.96. What we do every year, and some of you may be well aware of this, is in November, we have a tri-board meeting, and that is the Board of Finance, Board of Select Persons, and the Board of Education. And there we talk about our costs, our budgets, and the Board of Finance presents what they feel, because in our charter, the Board of Finance is charged with the financial viability of our community. That's their responsibility. And they give us a guideline now. They never used to. Years ago, I asked the Board of Finance for the guideline, and they said, why would we give you a guideline? I said, so we can be on the same page. And they said, but if we give you a guideline, then we can't cut you, because you're going to do what we tell you to do. Well, we've progressed well beyond that. And we have a Board of Finance today that is very, very proactive and excellent in assessing the financial condition of the community. During the tri-board meeting, they recommended that we all look at around a 3%, whether it's a little under, a little over, but target to 3%. So we went to work on our budget, the Board of Select Persons, and we were able to come in at 2.96. Could we shave a little bit more? Yeah, we could. We'd be sacrificing a few things on the operating side. So we're at a 2.96. The superintendent came in at 4.62. Our capital, the capital projects that I talked about, like for example, Bridgeberry and Portland Avenue, and that request was over 15 million. Now, let me digress for a second. I'm going to give you a little bit of history. In '04, we finally completed the bundle, and we incurred debt of about 140 million. And at that point, Board of Finance, or Kevin Redmond, our Director of Finance, and I sat down and we said, we've got to keep parameters on this capital until we pay down the debt service. And we said, okay, let's keep it at 2.5 to 3 million. And we did that for a couple of years. And then we realized, well, the cost of things are going up. So we were at 5 million to 6 million. Make a long story short, last year was 8 million. This year came in at 15 million. And we had to cut. We had to cut because we can't sustain constant 15, 18, $12 million capital expenditures. Now, we were able to cut it. The Board of Select Persons did to 10.2, 10.4, 10.471 is what the proposed capital spending is. But when you look at it, and hopefully you all read it because it'll be in the paper next week, we submitted everything, Kevin will be today, it'll give a breakdown of all the projects we're looking at. And even the projects that were eliminated, you could easily justify making improvements here in our community. But again, it became a financial consideration at the 10.4 million. So that's what we're going to propose in the fiscal year 27 budget, $10.4 million capital improvements, and they'll all be itemized so you can see them. And I can talk to them at a future date. The operating, we're at a 2.96. Now, the Board of Select Persons has the responsibility, and I think in 2010, 2014, 15, we changed the charter so that the Board of Select Persons makes a non-binding recommendation to the Board of Finance about the Board of Education budget. So remember I said they came in at 4.62. That budget came to the Board of Select Persons to make a non-binding recommendation. And A, we could approve it as presented. B, we could reduce it, right? Modify it, but only the number. And I personally don't like getting into the line items because that's the Board of Education. They prioritize, they work very hard in putting this budget together. Our administration, the superintendent and her team spend months, if not a whole year, working to make improvements to the system. But this year, the Board of Select Persons felt that at a 4.62, that if you looked at consistent 4% increases, your budget's going to double in not too many years. And that's something we felt we needed to get back down. That's a non-binding recommendation. That's all it is. And it's up to the Board of Finance to decide whether to take our recommendation, which was 3.45%. I think it's approximately a $1.4 million cut. That's huge. In anyone's budget, that's a lot of money. But we felt we needed to do that to hold back the continual climb of taxes in this town. And now it goes to the Board of Finance where they will make a decision on a couple of variables, not just our operating budget, 2.96. They could reduce ours. They can't increase it, but they can reduce it. They can reduce capital. If they increase it, it's got to come back to the Board of Select Persons, but they could reduce capital from 10.4 to whatever they feel is a better number in their opinion as financiers. And then on the Board of Education, they can accept or agree with the Board of Select Persons at 345. They could increase it or they could decrease it. But there's one other variable they deal with, and that's the use of fund balance. The Board of Finance policy is to keep our fund balance, our savings account. We all have savings account, I hope, and some wish they had a lot more than what they have, like I do, but we have a savings account. And that's where you go into the savings account and borrow some money, take some money out of there to apply to the operating costs to bring the mill rate down so that you don't have as much in taxes. Some people think, well, that's like taking money out of the bank to pay for my recurring costs, and at some point I'm going to run out, and then what do I do? But we've been fortunate because we run, as I said in the earlier part of my presentation, that we run at a surplus. So that surplus helps replenish that money, and we don't always use, we've never used all of what the Board of Finance allocates. So they have that option to take money out of the savings account. They are currently, in the tri-board meeting, said that they would use about $1 million. And what we did when we voted, we looked at different scenarios that I asked our director of finance, and you're more than welcome to look at these. It's all public information. And we came up with 5 different scenarios. Passed the Board of Ed at 462 using $1 million, and that would yield a 4.84% increase in taxes. 4.84. Scenario number 2, reduce the Board of Ed by $750,000 and use $1 million of fund balance, and that would bring the mill rate increase, your tax increase, down to 437. And then we said $1 million and $1 million. In other words, reduce it by $1 million. That would bring it down to 422. The fourth option was reduce the BOE by 1.4 million and use 1 million of fund balance. That would be a 397. And the final was the BOE $1 million, but use $1.5 million of fund balance, and that would yield a 3.91. That's what we looked at in terms of trying to figure out where did we want to be. And the Board of Selectmen agreed unanimously, select persons, agreed unanimously that we should be under, we have to be under 4%. We can't come into the public asking for greater, 4% or greater. That's why we voted, we went back up, and we said, well, the Board of Finance can only determine what they're going to use out of fund balance. We cannot. So we said we can't recommend 1.5, so we switched that obligation to the BOE and made that recommendation of a 3.97. My belief is that it will come down from there with the Board of Finance, but only they have the authority and can talk about that, which they will be doing. And I'll say now we have a public hearing on March 23rd, and then the Board of Finance meetings for that following week. And then they will vote either the end of the week or the beginning of the following week as to what goes to the public for a final vote. And that'll be interesting to see. But my gut tells me it's going to be below the 397 for sure. How that impacts all of us remains to be seen. There are members of the Board of Ed that are here that are concerned that if it does cut more, if the Board of Finance reduces more, what are they going to eliminate from the education program that's being proposed by the superintendent? So there's a lot of eyes on this, a lot of work going on, and a lot of decisions to be made. And again, most of the decisions are being made by volunteers of our community, just like you sitting here in the audience. Now, that's the budget. And I know I said a lot and you're probably confused, but you can ask any questions at the end or call my office and we can have a conversation. But I also need to talk to you about some of the other things that we're doing. We have formed several committees over this past year. And perhaps to me, the most important one was the police department, fire department. We had 2 referendums that failed. The first one by 71 votes. We reduced it from 85 million to 77 million, and that one went down in flames. That one was close to 2,000 people. Um, that was the difference between the yes and no. So we regrouped. We decided to appoint a new committee. Um, by the way, we had worked on this since we initially started in 2018, working on this project and reviewing different possibilities, looking at the existing facilities, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but we're appointed a new committee, and I've got to tell you, these are great people. It's incredible the amount of talent that we have in our community. We picked 7 people. We had a total of 50 candidates that showed an interest in becoming part of this committee to help solve the issue, because our fire department and police department, by the way, are well over 100 years old. They don't meet any of the safety codes, the communication, everything from A to Z. Whatever you want to talk about, we're out of compliance. So back in 2000, when we did the bundle and we paid it off in 23, 24, so that our debt service was back to where it was 20 plus years ago, we decided, okay, now's the time to address the next important thing in our community is our police department and our fire department. And by the way, I think we have some of the best people in the state of Connecticut. Our level of service here in Ridgefield, I feel, is second to none. The police were continuously, as you know, recognized as one of the safest communities, not even in the state, but well beyond. And our fire department, with our EMS services and the ambulance, we have our own paramedics. We have 3 paramedics, minimum on shift 24/7. When that ambulance arrives at your house, it's the emergency room coming to your driveway. The days of you being loaded in, or my being loaded into the ambulance and zooming off to the hospital, hurry up and get there, are no longer. They have all the most current technology. They set you up with leads. They put the leads so that all of your vitals begin transmitted to the hospital the second they do that. The IVs are set up so that the hospital is aware and has already started monitoring your health on the way there, so that you get the best care that's available when you arrive at the hospital. And you should be very proud of these men and women that serve in both the police department and the fire department. What many people don't realize is our police are, in fact, first responders as well. They each, because they're out patrolling each sector, many, many times are the first emergency responder to arrive, soon followed by the ambulance. And that's a great combination, and these people work together. And that's what led us, for those of you who may be thinking, why did you need a combined building? It's so big. They work together every day. They cover one another every day. And the days of the police not particularly communicating that well with the fire department and vice versa, because the police are out there protecting and patrolling 24/7, while some of the firemen may be taking a nap and there's no call, and you really aren't out there protecting the people. And that attitude existed for many, many years. That's gone. That's completely gone. And they have 100 total amount of respect for one another and work together all the time. So that's why we were talking about a facility where they both could be located, trained together, etc. So the PDFD committee is now at work. They probably about a month, a little over maybe, out of the 50 candidates, we chose 7. We chose a person who has some financial background. We chose a person that has public relations background, an incredible person, an individual. 2 people that are in construction management with major national companies probably in the twilight of their career. I'll put it that way, right? They have loads of experience. One individual who's a consultant who travels the country for the last 25 years advising municipalities on emergency management facilities, etc. So when you put these 7 people together, they have now broken down into their own subcommittees and are working diligently to come back with a proposal that we feel, and we will support whatever they come back with. It may be separate buildings, it may be one building. I don't know where it's going to be, but their proposal is what we're going to be coming back to you with in probably another 12 months. So the PDFD is on the front burner. We're also doing a traffic study on Route 35. For those of you who fight with traffic in the morning coming in on 35, it's terrible. I called the state because the traffic light at 35 in Cops Hill is not synchronized with the entrance to Cops Hill Plaza. So I called them up and I said, you know, can you put a new signalization system in at Cops Hill, sync it with Farmingville Road, and it'll work a lot better. And they said, we can start on it. We're going to have to do a traffic study. And I said, well, when do you think you can get going on it? And they said, 2030. And I said, I'll be dead. Are you kidding me? 2030 just to begin? And that's the frustration of the office that I work in. So you go and you say, and you look and you think, there's got to be a better way of doing it. So what we're doing is we have hired our own consultant who is going to do a traffic study from the entrance of Cops Hill Plaza, where the bank is, all the way north to the rec center. Because when you look at that distance, you know, the first part of it, we were just going to go Cops Hill Shopping Plaza, Farmingville Road. We'll study that, connect those lights, and that'll be it. And then we said with the approval of pickleball that is set to be built at the across from the entrance to Fox Hill, that, you know, they're going to have four courts, four people, 16 cars. Then you have another group coming in, and there could be 32 cars there, traffic in and out. We better look at that. And then we said, well, if we're going to look at that, we should look at the entrance to the rec center, because that is as busy as it's ever been, with Founders Hall being very popular as well as the rec center. So the study is going to go from the entrance to Cops Hill Shopping Plaza north to the entrance to the rec center. How do we pay for that? We get TAR money. It's called Town Aid Road money every year from the state government. Most, if not pretty much all of your communities in the state use it for paving. They just put it into paving and pave a few more roads, et cetera. We haven't done that. It's an old saying, keep your powder dry. We put it in a bank account, let it build up. And for example, this year, that's been a horrendous year for overtime, salt, damage to vehicles, transmissions, you name it. When we go over budget, we go into that account and pay for all of those extra costs so that we don't have to come back to the people and ask for more money. And it's worked very well. So what we're going to do is use that Town Aid Road account to do a traffic study. It's about $30,000. It's not a huge amount of money. I mean, to me, it's a lot of money, but overall in the budget that we're talking about, it's not a lot of money, but it's very important to the town to try and solve some of these problems that you all have to deal with on a regular basis. That study hopefully will start in April. So I just went through it with the Board of Selectmen on Wednesday night. Our paving, as I said, Ridgeberry Road is going to be a major project, but we're also going to be bringing water, public water, to the high school. And that may on the surface sound, oh, it's not a big deal. Why are you doing that? Well, we have two wells that were built. There was never public water up there. And the last couple of years, you remember, Aquarian extended the water main up in 116 to Craigmore Road because there was a well servicing a community there, a community well. They converted that to public water, and we are going to extend it to the high school. And the reason we're doing that is because the wells are at the end of life and they're beginning, there's an issue across the state of Connecticut, and it's called PFAS. Perfluoral and polyfluoral, I think, carbons that were first discovered when a B-17, I think, crashed at Bradley Airport. And the foam that was used went down into the drains and into the Farmington River. And they started noticing some fish showing up that what's causing this? They went all the way back, and they traced it back to the foam that was used in airports to extinguish diesel fires, etc. That is no longer allowed to be used. We had already gotten rid of ours, but many departments were still using it, carrying inventory of it. Everyone had to dispose of that. PFAS are already in us today. If we, each one of us as individuals, checked, we would have some tiny bit of PFAS that would show up. The Teflon that we all use, that was wonderful, right? In the kitchen, easy to clean the pots, put them away. That was the problem. And it is getting into groundwater. So what we need to do is to be sure we go to public water. The levels now are low enough that we meet all the standards. There's nothing in violation. But if you start looking forward, we're converting everywhere we can to public water. For those of you who are on private wells, I would suggest getting your water tested. And we take it for granted here in Connecticut that we have great water. We don't have any water issues. You still should test your water just to be sure so that you can add additional filtration. And filtration is available that corrects a lot of the contaminants that you may find in your water that you think is fine. You don't detect, you don't smell, you don't taste. They're there. So a word of caution. But we're extending that water main. We're getting 50% of that will be paid for by a grant. I want to talk about form of government since we're here, and I'll be wrapping up soon. But with the League of Women Voters, always interested getting to know your government. Last year, year and a half ago, the Board of Selectpersons, we were talking and looking at how our town has grown. We're now 25,000, depending which statistic you look at. It could be anywhere from 33 up to 200 or 300. Yesterday, I saw one that said we're at 25,400, but I don't think we are. Anyway, we're much bigger now. And with that comes a lot of challenges. Our form of government, when we have a town meeting, seldom do people show up. And it's usually the people that are most impacted or are advocating for a certain issue or opposing, vehemently opposing an issue. And you get one side or the other. And some of you may remember Andy Bodner. He was on the Board of Selectmen for several years. And we had a town meeting because we were going to charge the Goodwill trailer where it is $500 a month to park there because they weren't paying anything. And every 501 pays something, right? A modest fee. And they approved the lease. We had a public hearing, and we went to a town meeting. And at the town meeting, there were the 5 members of the board, and there were 4 people in the audience. And those 4 people had been invited by Andy. So you can see where this is going. What happened when it came to the vote failed 5-4 because Andy voted against it, as well as the 4 people in the audience, and the other 4 selectmen voted in favor, but it failed. And his point was that town meetings, we need to look at that because people can really get something. You can sign a petition, force us to have a town meeting, and put an issue to the vote, pack the meeting, and get whatever you want passed. So at 25,000 people, should we be reviewing that? Should we be thinking about the form of government that we have? Danbury has a mayor and city council, right? Other towns have a first select person, a board of select person, a legislative body that approves all the money. In addition to town meetings, there are hybrids. So we formed a committee. They went to work. They did an excellent job. They interviewed people all over the state in various forms of government. And the recommendation to us was to hire or place a town administrator in the management of the town. What's a town administrator? There's a town manager and a town administrator. Town manager is the CEO of the town. They run everything. Your first select person becomes more ceremonial, maybe some policy stuff, but the day-to-day operation of the town becomes the town manager. you're changing your town meeting. Town administrator is just another position that you're adding in the management of the town. For example, we have a building official, we have an assessor, we have a tax collector, we have a town clerk, all considered managers in the town. The town administrator would become another one of those, working closely with the first select person. The question is, how do we handle that person in terms of responsibility? So in the research, getting down into the town administrator, we still haven't made that call yet. And of course, this will be a vote by you, the people. We looked at Darien. John Zagrodsky is the current first select person there. Darien has had a town administrator for the last 30 years at least. And he said, I'm more than willing to come and talk to the Board of Select Persons. And he was interviewed by the committee, by the former government committee. He's more than willing to come and talk to us about how a town administrator is a benefit and helps the town run more smoothly. In Darien. In Wilton just went to a town administrator a couple of years ago, and the first select person at the time reduced her salary to pay for a town administrator. And they hired a town administrator in a 5-year contract at about $195,000 a year. The problem was when it came time to elect a new first select person, no one wanted the job because she had reduced the salary. And the town administrator all of a sudden became basically the town manager, and there was no buy-in from the bottom up, and your department heads were frustrated, and this all being compounded with a business manager that they had hired to handle both the Board of Ed and the school and the town together. Efficiencies make sense. That administrator, that business manager took a leave of absence. Her husband was ill. Okay. Well, what came to the surface was that they had moved to Wyoming, and her husband became a police officer, and she became the business manager for the town they lived in, for the Board of Ed in the town, and then was running Wilton virtually. You can't make this up. And I know Tony very well. I know she gets upset with me when I give that as an example. But for us, we have Matt Knickerbocker, who used to be the first select person in Bethel, who was hired to be the town administrator in Wilton, coming in at the same time with John Zagrodsky from Darien to talk about the town administrator so we can get it right from people who work with it every day. One of them a very positive experience, the other one not so positive. So stay tuned on that. We still don't know where we're going to go with it. We did, however, put in our budget a half a salary in the event that we decide in the next 6 months that this is a good option for the town, that we have some money there to begin the hiring and actually bring someone on board to do that. Okay. The other committee that I want to talk about is, so we have the PDFD committee. They meet every Thursday night at the Annex if you're interested, and it's streamed, so you can go to our website and tune in. We have the Form of Government committee. I'm sorry, Helen? Yeah, every Thursday, and it's streamed. You can watch it every Thursday night at 7. We also formed a senior tax committee. People in town, we have not adjusted our tax credit program for seniors over 65 in many years. And we have been asked by a lot of seniors, you got to catch up. This is crazy. Every year, anyone turns 65 can apply for and receive a $1,048 tax credit. No means test, you're 65, you get it. I'm not going to go through all the meetings, but eventually, here's where we're at now. We will keep that program in place. To that, we are adding an additional program for seniors over 65 that if you're under $85,000 per year in income, you can get $200 additional in 27, which is $1,248, and another $200 in fiscal year 28. That'll bring your tax credit to $1,448. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's progress. We're helping those who need the help. That's program number one. That's program 1 and 2. Number 1 being the existing program, the second program being the means test to help people in need. The third is the tax deferment program, which probably is one of the best because I had my mom sign up for it when she was alive. If you're age 65, and it used to be if your household income is under 65,000, you could defer 5%, 10%, 100% of your taxes. If you needed a new roof and you didn't have the money and you pay $6,000, she was paying $6,000 a year back then, she could defer her taxes for a couple of years, pay for the roof, and then start paying her taxes again. The town would place a lien on the property, a mortgage, and it's at 3% simple interest, and you pay it back when either you pass or you decide to sell your home. What we have done with the new program is to raise that threshold to $100,000 so that if you're making under $100,000, you can take advantage of this program. And we don't look at it as a cost. We don't itemize it as a cost in our budget because it's a reduction in cash flow, and eventually we're going to get the money back, and we have a simple interest of 3%. That's probably the single best program for those who really are having a difficult time in town, to help them pay for what they need to cover, as well as stay in their home and having that security. So we have to vote on that. Probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll be voting on that as well. The money for that is in the budget. That is under our elderly tax credit, it's called. We added about $250,000. We paid about $1.9 million out. That number's going to $2.2 million in estimated tax credits that we can give to seniors in our community to help address their needs and keep them here in our community. And then finally, the last committee we formed was the leaf blower committee. I don't know. It's a bulky report. I'm still looking for what the recommendation is. I'm not sure. I think they punted and gave it back to us, making some recommendations, but we would have to choose what we're going to do. We haven't gotten into that yet, but we will be doing so in the near future. I'm going to stop talking because I've been talking quite a while, and there's so many other things that I could talk to you about, but I want to give you an opportunity to ask a few questions on any topic you want about anything that may have. Yes, sir.
We don't have a Ridgefield press anymore.
They have to speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry, I said at the beginning.
Yeah.
There's
and you can't
Vanna.
hold it. You don't.
That's all right. That's all right. Did you wash your hands? Okay. We don't have a Ridgefield press anymore. I don't get the Danbury News Times. Got mad at them.
Yeah.
They're done. What about information? I get the email every week. I
We
think.
do a newsletter every Friday, and it's any 501s or people that write in some interesting stuff in town. We're just under 2,000 subscribers right now, but it's brief, it's to the point. Jillian Lewis handles that for us. She's in the office, and that's the best we can do right now in addition to the press. But the press is a very important point that you bring up, because even some of the employees that still live here, ex-employees, are very frustrated by the inability for Hearst to transmit, communicate happenings in Ridgefield. If you look at the Ridgefield press, it's basically a rerun of whatever was in the News Times the previous week, or whatever stories about, I don't know, from different parts of the world that have no relevance to us whatsoever. I can tell you that there is a group that has formed that are studying the possibility of beginning a newspaper for Ridgefield. Much the same as Reading has the Reading Sentinel. I don't know if any of you have had an opportunity to see that, but there is a group in town that's working on something like that. They've already met the publisher to talk about how that happened and how they can get it going. But it's difficult. People really have to go out and look for and capture the news themselves. That was one of our biggest issues with this whole PDFD effort, was that social media platforms would have information, but much of the time it was misinformation. You know, it got twisted. The old telephone game, when I whisper in Fran's ear and pass it all around, and what comes out of Rob is like, what are you talking about? We didn't even talk about that. That's what's happening with social media, and it was extremely frustrating for us because our hands are tied as well as a government. The day we set a date for a referendum, we're not allowed to spend one nickel of your money either promoting or opposing an issue. We'll be fined. It's a state law. And that really handcuffed us in our ability to communicate with the public, because we know there are people in town, in every community, that are going to file an FOI violation. They're going to file with the SEEC, State Elections Enforcement Commission. It's very frustrating, but we're doing the best we can.
Okay. All right. So I've been in town about 15 years.
Yes.
And I'm just recently retired. So this question may be naive or a little bit
Go ahead.
out of it, but I'm curious. Coming from business, and I noticed a couple of years ago that two ice cream places were placed right next to each other when you had the iconic Deborah Ann's, and she tried to talk to the corporation. So I guess my question is, what's the vetting for new businesses, or without getting too deep on it? how
Yeah, the
that
town
works?
really doesn't get involved with people looking to rent private property. But what happened there was, again, the left hand not talking to the right hand. And the people bought the building, Deborah Ann, purchased the building, was very quiet. That was negotiated. And while that was taking place, at the same time, the other company was negotiating for a lease in the space they were in. And the right hand didn't talk to the left hand at all, because it's all pretty private when those negotiations are going on. No one really wants to make it public, right? And unfortunately, it happened and the other business closed.
So you could have 100 restaurants, but it's not part of your purview in terms of.
No, the only purview we have is relative to the health of those facilities. They're inspected, and our health department can shut them down. They get 3 warnings. If they don't get corrected, they're actually shut down. And we've definitely warned a couple of restaurants and even shut 1 or 2 down in the past.
Well, I was just questioning how many of one segment could be in town as opposed to having a diversity.
Yeah, that's zoning, and you do a central business district. Yeah.
Hey, chaps, no dialogue.
I have two, if I'm allowed. As far as like the tax base goes and trying to increase the companies and or buildings,
Mhm.
corporations that would be there, do we have somebody that works for the town who actively seeks to get companies to come in? Like, for example, across from like Pamby and Wooster Hollow, I think the Ullman Company went down to 1 building, and then that Schmente building is all up.
Yes.
As I drive to Wilton, which I think of as a very similar town, similar topography, similar population, the area from Route 7 and where it turns to 33, the amount of building that has gone on there in the past, call it 5-7 years, is incredible. Not only self-storage, but senior living and a church and like, it's unbelievable. So do we have somebody that actively tries to get people to come in, or even if it's people that want to build more apartment housing? as they've done there. Do we do that?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question, but simply put, the zoning commission oversees the areas of town that allow commercial versus residential or a combination of. Wilton had made the decision years ago to develop Route 7. We have been very selective, I'll say, in what we allow on Route 7. The part from 35, that intersection in there is experiencing some growth, and I think we're going to see more in the future. But you also bring up who's responsible. I'll answer that question. That's the ECDC, the Economic Community Development Commission. They are the ones that, for example, host Shark Tank to come up with some fresh ideas, new products, and individuals have actually volunteered to financially support the people making the presentation to begin a business here in Ridgefield. And it's working. But Ridgefield is not a commercial destination. We all know that. It's basically residential. And we've steered away from Route 7. What we're looking at are the two gateways to the town, the area I mentioned, 35 and 7, seeing that get developed. We bought, or excuse me, Ullman donated next to Floby's now, where it used to be Carvel's, there's an empty area. Ullman's donated that to the town, and it's about 7 acres that goes behind the Floby's out into the wetlands. I asked them if we could develop that with some commercial, and they said absolutely not. They wouldn't allow us to do that. I said, can we use it for recreation? And they said, that you can, as long as it's named after the Ullman family. So we have that property. We've looked at actually putting some pickleball courts down there. But more importantly, to the rear of the property, and I need approval from Ullman, you know how dangerous it is to pull out into Route 7 from there, is to bring a interior road out to Laurel Lane and then back to Route 7 with a traffic light there to have a safe egress. You can turn into Floby's, pickleball courts, kids' play areas, but exit out that new area, new way with a traffic light. But economic community development is responsible for that. I can tell you that we have someone that's going to reopen the Early Bird as a diner. I can't tell you who it is. I don't know if they signed the lease yet, but the lease, they told me, was in their inbox, and they are planning moving forward, and they're very excited about it. So you're the first to hear that. Did I answer your questions, Mary Pat? Okay.
Rudy, talking about leases and talking about Main Street, which you discussed at your early comments. I have learned recently, and I don't have all the facts, but I have enough facts, that the owner of the properties that are on Main Street and on Bailey around the corner, and that I'll call it the Bailey, and then
Yes.
and I've learned that and if you go online, you can find out that there are places that are available now, places that are going to be available soon, and those places are not interested in having somebody else come in, and they are on existing leases. Regency is pushing the rent dramatically at this point on every one of those. That's going to affect Main Street significantly if businesses that have been there a while and are part of, I'll call it, the neighborhood, are forced out because of Regency's increasing prices. But they're also saying, in one particular case I know of, it's available soon, and there's a current lease that lasts for, a number of years, not a few months.
That seems like a legal issue there. How can you rent a place that's already under agreement?
You can't. And
Correct.
what I'm saying is Regency is misrepresenting and attempting to increase rents. People on Bailey have left.
Yeah.
Because,
That's been a pretty high turnover street. Yeah.
yeah, but they've also left.
Yeah, when
in one
Regency
case-
bought that from Wing Biddle that owned it, he lived right over in Lewisboro and his wife shopped here. So we had the advantage of her going home and saying, why haven't you painted this, or this looks awful, right? Well, that's gone. And now it's Regency Partners out of Florida, as was stated. They purchased Cops Hill Plaza, about 6, 7 years ago. And then they purchased everything from Wing Biddle, all of his properties. Erstadt Biddle is the corporate name. At that point, I called them, asked for a meeting, because what concerned me, when you look at their portfolio, all of their holdings are usually supermarket-based shopping plazas. They are not Main Street in any community. So that was my concern and why I called them. What is your plan? Are you prepared to maintain the properties, et cetera, et cetera? And they said they had every intention to do that, to be a very proactive landlord, and put me in touch with an agent who worked in Westport, I think he works. And we've had several meetings about converting one of the alleyways to a walkway, but dress it up, put some lights overhead, signage, et cetera. We've yet to implement that, but they've been pretty agreeable to allowing us to do that. What they do with their rents, they keep very, very private. In fact, when their buildings are assessed, the assessor uses the income method to assess the value of the property. And they have to sit down and say, this is what I'm allocating. This is what we're receiving for rent per square foot. Al doesn't like to share that because if he shares it with me, the owners find out, they're not going to give it to him anymore because they don't have to present that to him. And I've honored that privacy, and I try and keep at least a general knowledge about what the leases are going for. But I'll follow up with that to see what's going on. How can they lease something that's already occupied with a long-term lease? That's impossible, unless it's putting a carrot out there, seeing who comes in, and then try and convince them to go to something else. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm new in town
Welcome to
And-
Ridgefield.
for just 2 years.
Okay.
When the police and fire issue came up,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel qualified to vote on it.
Okay.
I opposed it for a reason that I couldn't find out whether there was a consultant that came in and said, the police and fire should be in one place and they should be combined.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a consultant? And in my opinion, the police where they are now and the fire department where they are now is historically and viable. Katuna Street is responsive to Main Street, which in our history in Ridgefield with the Great Fire, and the police department is in a place that's close to both the middle school, a grammar school, and playgrounds. And in Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
the police first response should be to a active shooter and
Right.
to be able to respond to that. My fear is where you had it, not you, but where it
Yeah.
was placed was in a low spot in which everyone, fire department especially, would have to drive to, as opposed to the volunteers and where they live.
Yeah.
Can I find anything in the town?
Sure. What I said earlier is we have a new committee that's working on it. You can attend those meetings. They're every Thursday night at the Annex. You can go into the archive and look at what they've discussed. I can go back to 2018 and give you a brief report because it's 8 years ago that we initially started. We put out an RFP. We had 3 architectural firms come in with experience in police departments and fire departments. And we began the search. And the first thing we had to do was called a needs assessment, where they hired a fire consultant and we had a police consultant that came in and walked through the buildings, spoke with the chiefs and the rank and file to get a good feeling for the current operation. and they came up with a needs assessment. Of course, it was up here, right? Everyone wants. Hey, if we're going to get a chance to ask for something, let's ask for the best and the most. And we had to bring it down. But to answer your question, yes, all of that research was done. The next part after the needs assessment was to look at redoing where we're at now, as well as are there any other locations where we could possibly locate a fire department, a police department, or a joint facility. We looked at the taking of VP school. Maybe there would be a redistricting and that school would be available. We could use that property. We didn't see it as being a location advantage, and we to 70%, if you went to the chief, of our calls come out of Katuna Street and turn north all day long. And we knew we grid the town and placed over a 2-year period the number of calls in each grid throughout the entire town. And the call frequency was without a doubt to the north. All your medical offices are located in that Cops Hill, South Street area. And response time is critical. So you don't want to, if you're going to relocate any facility, what is your response time? And response time is pretty specific to EMS and fire response. Police are out, as I mentioned before, they're working hard, traveling the districts where the firemen are sleeping. The police are out in the districts, so they could have headquarters in Branchville or wherever because they're constantly patrolling the town, and response is not that big of an issue. But for the fire department, they respond to calls for emergencies. So where you put them, where you place them in your community, you want to be sure that you're not negatively impacting the ability to respond on a timely basis. And that was based on the 2 assisted living down on Route 35 and 7, and 1 right on Old Quarry Road. Those 3 facilities account for about 25% of our calls, and the most egregious call is a lift assist. And we respond because anyone who dials 911, by law, we have to respond to. But what is happening in those facilities is that the employees are instructed, if Mr. Marconi is laying on the floor because I slid out of my chair or fell out of the bed, give him a pillow, cover him with a blanket, and call 911. We do not want you trying to lift, hurting the back, having a workers' comp claim, and they call 911. 25% of our calls are being with the assisted living facility. So we're working on trying to get cooperation, even having people go in and train how to use different devices to be able to pick people up. The Old Quarry location it improved the response time to those calls in that area, but we did sacrifice areas to the south a little bit, not a lot. The biggest issue was traffic on Grove Street. And that's where the volunteers said, there's no way we're going to be able to respond because they get water to a fire. And they do an excellent job at that. We depend on them doing that. And in addition to that, they have several people who are rated and trained for interior firefighting that assist our firefighters in a major fire, which we've had 3 in the last several months. So volunteers are very important. Their concern about getting to the location was a valid one. And what we did going back, when we sold property on Sunset Lane to Marty Hanchy and his development, 77 Sunset, we have in that agreement the permission, the easement to enter from Sunset Lane into this property. And that's valid today. Everything is signed, sealed, and on the deed. The volunteers could come in that direction rather than confronting Grove Street at 5 o'clock when traffic is bumper to bumper, or early in the morning. So we did look at a lot of stuff. The new committee is starting with a fresh slate. And hopefully you can have an opportunity now to start from the beginning, listen to everything they talk about. They're going to look at single locations. They're going to look at a combination. They're going to look at different areas. They're doing an incredible amount of in-depth due diligence to come up with what they feel is the best solution for us. But I would also ask you to tour the current facilities, because those facilities were built over 100 years ago. The current facility on Katuna Street, it's great. And a lot of our current employees say there's so much history here. We love working in this building, knowing who we're following and the years of service as firefighters. But when you look at it, the driveway on the right, the property line is in the middle of the driveway. The phone company owns half of that driveway. We've just been using it for years and years and years. They're literally, could you expand it? You could go up and create room, but there's no parking whatsoever. Can we figure that out? I don't know. The new committee's going to look at that as well. One option is to make a deal with the post office, but we started trying to do that in 2001, late 90s. They won't work with us at all. The current facility for the PD, we looked at putting a new police department there. It's a National Historic Register building. That comes with some concerns. You know, you can't just go in and remove it. And I wouldn't want it that way. There's a character of that street that you have to maintain. But going to the rear, you could do something there. It'll be interesting to see what they come up. We had an opportunity at one point to purchase the property next door, Fred Montanari's property, the gray house right to the south of the police station. It was $650, $700, and one of the siblings ended up buying it back from his siblings, so it's no longer available. That is the property that an application came in for 3 or 4 houses in the back that was denied, and he came back with a 60-unit affordable housing project that I don't think it'll ever get built. I hope to God it doesn't, but that's that property. If we had that, then you could really do an expansion, but on the current lot, the reviews said it's going to be difficult to build anything. If you want to sacrifice and say, all right, let's just look at the next 5 years and throw something up, put a little addition on, we're going to be fine. You could do that as well. The original charge was to look at growth over the next 20 to 30 years. Where are we going to be at so that whatever we build, we're not coming back in 10 years saying, oh, we have to spend another 10, 12 million, we have to put an addition on, whatever that may be. And then, as I said, code compliance, OSHA safety, all of those need to be looked at. But Chief Kreitz at the police department, you could call him right now, and he'll give you a tour if you went up there, if he's there. And the same thing with Chief Duckworth or Assistant Chief Cerulli or Major Fowler. They're there. Come in, look at the buildings, ask any questions you want. It's an open door. And we hope to come to some resolution with the new committee. Thank you for the question.
Question. You discussed earlier the expansion of the public water infrastructure
Yes,
system up to the high school.
yes.
So 2 quick questions. One, how does that impact the surrounding community? Specifically, will they maybe not impact, actually benefit from homes around the area that can access public water?
Sure.
And then are there any considerations, plans, near or far future for other communities such as the West Mountain area, for example, to have Aquarian look at that as a possibility also for homes in different communities, including that community to have benefit from public water?
Sure. Public water is a major concern in our state, not just in Ridgefield. When we had an application for the Bennett's Pond property, the developer came in to build 500 units under an affordable housing application on the south side of Bennett's Pond Road, 155 acres roughly. The Planning and Zoning Commission denied it, denied the building that was in the Saugatuck watershed area because that's the headwaters for the Saugatuck, and that's our drinking water that goes into the Aquarian Reservoir system. They approved the development on the Norwalk River watershed side of that 155 acres on the basis that Norwalk River is not considered a drinking water supply. They appealed that. And they said, we want 500 units. And they went to the Affordable Housing Appeals Court. And Judge Levy, this is several years ago, Judge Levy in his decision stated that the need for affordable housing is not outweighed by the need to protect the quality of our drinking water. It was a huge victory for Ridgefield. The developer then took it to Superior Court to appeal it, and won on the appeal on the basis that the state POCD, which is the Plan of Conservation and Development, allows 2-acre zoning in a watershed area. So he said, bring it back to Ridgefield Planning and Zoning, and they have to give you a minimum of 2-acre zoning in the Saugatuck watershed area. They have never come back. Never. And it's baffled us, surprised us, but it's been 10 years now and they haven't come back. But the quality of drinking water is critical. Where are we going to go with it? We need to expand it to the high school to service that population with the 2 wells that are on the property for the reasons I gave you. I believe if there's a water line in the street, you can tie into it. If you call Aquarian and tell them you want to tie into public water, it's going to cost you to tie in. You know, it may cost you in the area of $20,000-$25,000 to tie in, depending on what side of the road it's on, etc. How far away from it you are, how many feet they have to run of pipe. But you do have that opportunity. And yes, we are looking to expand water wherever we can, public water. Yes.
Can I check? Oh, you would like to ask a question. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask a question? If you want to raise your hands after this gentleman.
Yeah, simple question. If you're delivering water to the high school, wouldn't you also deliver water to the middle school?
Yeah, both are included on that campus. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Circling back to the capital budget, Rudy, I get a little confused when we talk about grants versus capital investments. So when we
Yes.
talk about the money for Ridgefield in the capital budget, that's specifically money that has to be brought in from the town as opposed to grants or federal, state
From the
funding.
taxpayers, yes. Yeah, the grants, what we'll do, we have to put the full amount cost of the project in the budget, but you'll see underneath a credit based on, for example, we'll put in the budget sidewalks, $150,000, but there'll be a credit under it of 150, now 233, it was increased, that we use called LOCIP, Local Capital Improvement Program. We use that for our sidewalks. And once in a while, we did the ACT roof with that money because it builds up, and that's what we use it for. But any grant money, and we work very hard. The COG, which is a Council of Governments in Western Connecticut, because we don't have county government here, but we do have a COG, Council of Governments, and that's Greenwich to Westport, north up into Sherman. I'm the chairman of that group, and we have DOT, it's called LOTSIP money. So you have LOCIP, Local Capital Improvement Program. The acronyms are going to kill you. We also have LOTSIP, which is Local traffic capital improvement programs. That's what we got 8 million to do Ridgeberry Road for. And there's usually an 80-20 split. So that project is 10 million, 8 million of it'll come from the lot SIP program. But we applied, we got very close, by the way, something relative to the public safety building, and I'll just call it that for now. We did apply for an earmark out of Congress, and we made it through several rounds, but we lost in the final round. That was for 10 million. But I don't talk about that because you're not guaranteed that money, and I don't want to mislead the public. I have to give you what it's going to cost. Can we get some grant money? I sure as hell hope so. And for example, North Branford got 4 million out of the bond commission to build a fire department. We need to get into the bond commission as well. So you need to have good relationships with the government in Hartford, like we were able to get 2.5 million for the Boys and Girls Club expansion. That helped them tremendously, which is one of the best programs we have for kids in the town after school. But grants are going to become harder and harder, more and more competitive as we move forward with the cost of everything going up and tariffs, if there are tariffs. Yeah.
So that $10 million is Ridgefield funding.
It would have been, we didn't make it. We didn't make it. But it could have been, and it would be earmarked for Ridgefield. What we just received notice on is redoing the parking lot at Yanity and creating more parking up there in that lower area where cars park on the grass that often gets muddy and cars getting stuck. We're going to redo that, and actually it's getting into the weeds, but there's something called MS4. As the EPA passed it down to the state, pushed it down to us, which means that you're not allowed to discharge water off a site. You have to have a detainage area. So any work we do, like with a parking lot, we need to create the on-site detainage so we get credit for it, so it's eventually not going into the Great Swamp. The overall goal is to reduce the amount of pollution that's going into the waterways. So that money was an earmark from Himes' office. Congressman Himes was $1 million, and we just got noticed on that 2 weeks ago.
So that 2 million deficit of the 10 for Ridgeberry is.
That's ours.
That's in our $10 million budget for 2027.
Yes, that's ours. It's going to cost us $2 million. So that's probably 20 cents. It's going to be spread out over a couple of years because we're not going to do it all at once. It would be a major disruption because that's a very important artery in the town. Anyone else?
Can I just check anyone else? Oh, coming back for a second one? I didn't say you could do two first, you know.
My other one goes back to the fire and police department. And,
Yes.
And I understand how social media and people typing behind curtains gets everything blown out of proportion, and the lack of a press like we all used to know it is harmful. My question is, the surrounding towns, back to Wilton, they just did a fire and police.
Just police.
Just police rehaul. Okay. And then there's another town nearby that's just doing something. So are you guys all working together, or do we have a lot of camaraderie happening with other towns that are doing this? And FYI, I am the parent of a fireman, and he did spend many years with our local volunteerism. But there's no way the fire department can stay on Katuna Street.
Yeah. Yes, we do look at regionalizing. I worked on a project recently to regionalize with the city of Danbury. We bought what are called, a little bit too much detail, but Pierce fire trucks. They're the highest rated. They last forever, and it's the best thing we ever did. The city of Danbury uses all Pierce fire trucks. So I proposed to Danbury, with a facility they built on Kenosha Avenue, that we do a joint maintenance facility to reduce costs, right? Because in the repair of emergency vehicles, when you get to a certain level of work, you need a sign off by someone called an EVT, an emergency vehicle technician. And a regular mechanic cannot do a brake job, right? It's got to be signed off by an EVT, for example. It's incredible. But these people make about $100,000 to $110,000 a year. Do we hire our own, or do we look to a partnership with Danbury? So Danbury went ahead and did a proposal. We had a meeting up at the mayor's office, and I thought, great, this is going to be perfect. They came back with a proposal that we were paying for a truck, we were paying for a laborer, it was crazy. It didn't make any sense. So we kind of put that on the shelf. Now Mayor Alves came into office. They're bringing it back, asking would we be interested in participating, but only if it makes financial sense. I did talk with the chief and the assistant chief. We had a meeting yesterday morning, and I asked, for example, with Branchville, some of the concerns as we grow, and with Branchville possibly as a population center in the future, as a TOD, a transit-oriented development. It's a whole nother story, but the potential to meet our housing demands, do we do it there where we have public transportation? And if we do, what are the demands of our infrastructure going to be, specifically to fire and EMS? I said, what if we approached Wilton, Georgetown, Weston, and Ridgefield, Reading, really, Georgetown, 4 communities, and put one station that we each have our particular piece of equipment that responds, because Reading has had an incredible hit on them relative to Meadow Ridge and responding to Meadow Ridge. And as I said, assisted living, have a lot of calls. Meadow Ridge is no different. So we're going to look at that as a regional basis in the future, so that we're not all spending money for our individual silos, that we're regionalizing it and sharing some of the costs. I tried to do that with the police, but the Police Chiefs Association got pretty upset with me. I said, why do we have to have all these police departments? Why don't we put one here? We'll buy the cars, and we'll have our cars still, patrol our town, but they'll report to one central facility. And the chiefs didn't like that.
I'm just going to check if there are no further questions.
I want one last topic is housing. We're getting a lot of pressure from the state on housing affordability, if I may. I know we're up against the clock. Don't throw me out, Brenda, please. The issue here, and I want to talk about it publicly, is we're beginning to get pressure from the state to build affordability, right? And there have been applications that have come in addressing affordability. They're going to build an affordable housing project over here at the old restaurant, and my God, the traffic, and no one wants it. And each time an application comes in, everyone gets upset. It becomes very contentious. Everyone's angry. Do we continue a reactive position and wait for these applications to come in, or do we take a proactive position? Address how many units do we need, like for a moratorium, and actually create a project that addresses that need, so we can get a moratorium and we don't have to worry about Main Street being rezoned by the state into half-acre lots. We take control of our own destiny. So keep your ears open for that. And the last thing is the battlefield. The Battle of Ridgefield's coming up in 2027. We have been working very hard, and we got federal grants to study the entire battlefield, coming in from right down here. And now there's an application, a pre-app that's been submitted at 563, I think, Main Street, right across from the monument, to actually redo that, take the wall out, lower the topography, and put in like 12 to 15 units. We're going to fight it, and we're going to fight it hard, because we cannot allow the character of this Main Street, our community, to change ever. And if we don't take a stand, believe me, it's going to happen. So we would appreciate all the support you can give us in helping us fight this application. Thank you.
I want to just hold before everybody goes. Two things. It's a public service announcement. If you are interested in finding more out about the committee that's meeting about the public safety building, I know because we've sent this out to all our League of Women Voters members. If you go to the Ridgefield Town Government website, there is a green banner across the top. Click on it, you can sign up, and it takes you straight to the web page where you can sign for updates. You can click on the link for to watch the meetings. So it's actually on the Town of Ridgefield Governance website. Big green banner. Click on that. And I want to thank Rudy for coming.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the library, I just want to thank Rudy, especially for his time this morning and encyclopedic knowledge of our town and everything that's happening. Thank all of you for coming and being engaged. We hear that all the time at the library when we have programs. People will compliment us on our engaged audience, and we do have a really engaged and involved town. So thank you all. That takes everybody's time. And of course, to thank the Fran and the wonderful League of Women Voters for the important civic engagement programming we do throughout the year. So thank everyone.